Is that my phone?
No, that's mine. Sorry about that. That was actually Liesel saying she found a first edition hardback of The Great Hunt at Goodwill.
Oh, awesome.
And sending me a picture. So that's, that was what that message was someone just bragging about a first edition The Great Hunt.
As you can see, our lives are steeped in this. It's like, totally unrelated.
I can't talk about the Wheel of Time right now. I'm talking about the Wheel of Time. Damn it.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
Chapter 18 of the Fires of Heaven, a Hound of Darkness. And our symbol is the opposing women, the Black Ajah symbol, I've taken to calling it.
Inverted faces.
Liandrin guided her horse through the crowded streets of Amador, the sneer on her rosebud lips hidden by her deep, curving bonnet. She had hated to give up her multitude of braids, and hated even more the ludicrous fashions of this ludicrous land. The reddish-yellow of hat and riding dress she rather liked, but not the large velvet bows on both. Still, the bonnet hid her eyes. Combined with honey-yellow hair, brown eyes would have named her Tarabonner in an instant. Not a good thing in Amador right now, and it hid what would have been even worse to show here, an Aes Sedai's face. Safely hidden, she could smirk at the white cloaks, who seemed to be every fifth man in the streets. Not that the soldiers who made another fifth would have been any better. None of them ever thought to look inside the bonnet, of course. Aes Sedai were outlawed here, and that meant there were none. Even so, she felt a little better when she turned in at the elaborate iron gates in front of Jorin Arene's house. Another fruitless trip looking for word from the White Tower. There had been nothing since she learned that Elida thought she was in control of the tower, and that Sanche woman had been disposed of. Swan had escaped, true, but she was a useless rag now. The gardens behind the gray stone fence were full of plants, going rather brown from lack of rain, but trimmed and trained into cubes and balls, though one was shaped like a leaping horse. Only one, of course. Merchants like Arene mimicked their betters, but they dared not go too far, lest someone think their conceit too high. Elaborate balconies decorated the large wooden house with its red-tiled roofs, and even a colonnade. Am I saying that word right? Colonnade.
That's correct.
Of carved columns. But unlike the Lord's dwelling, it was meant to copy. It stood on a stone foundation no more than 10 feet tall, a childish pretense at a noble's manor. The stringy, gray-haired man who scurried out deferentially to hold her stirrup while she dismounted and take her reins was clad all in black. Whatever colors a merchant chose for livery, they were sure to be some real lord's colors. And even a minor lord could cause trouble for the richest seller of goods. People in the streets called black merchant's livery, and snickered when they said it. Liandrin despised the groom's black coat as much as she did Arene's house, and Arene himself. She would have true manners one day, palaces. They had been promised to her, and the power that went with them.
So Liandrin's dress here, she's wearing a bonnet and a dress with, like, big bows on it. She's like got this rosebud little face. You know, she looks like this really, really crazy, creepy, evil doll, right? Like,
Aradia put it well. Power-hungry psycho.
Totally.
But yeah, she does not look like it.
No.
Any of you guys ever watch Killing Eve, the BBC drama? It's like a spy versus spy thing. Was the kind of main bad guy always makes me think of Liandrin. She's like an adorable, deranged murderer, essentially.
That's Liandrin to a T. And I love some of her thought processes here. There's a few things she thinks that I'll enjoy talking about, just from her perspective, just like how she justifies the things she does in her head and how much she hates men and what she thinks men think about, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like a rabid hatred.
And I notice here, she's like, she had learned that Elida thought she was in control of the tower, because I assume she knows at this point that Alviarin is black.
I'm not sure, although there is, in a minute here, in the tower she had known only one of the 12 who went with her when she left. 2 of the 12 are dead. But I don't know, that doesn't say anything about what she learned after leaving the tower.
Mm-hmm. It also doesn't say if maybe she knew some Black Ajah that weren't in the 12.
Yeah, or if she knows about Miss Anna being there and actually in charge of the tower, probably.
Yeah, I don't know if she knows. Here, when we see her being confronted by Moghedien, Moghedien says, whoever you get your orders from in the White Tower. And we know that person is Liandrin, and we know that person is Alviarin, who's taking her orders from Messa Anna. And here Moghedien's sort of interrupting that flow to be like, nope, these are my Black Ajah now.
Do we know if Alviarin is head of the Black?
Yeah, and the fact that she's also placed so close to the head of the White Tower, the Emerald Seat, right? Like that gives her just some inherent power and some ability to essentially make commands of the Emerald Seat and control the power. As she says, when we see her confront Thane here in a minute, and she prefers to be the power behind the power.
And Elida's so obtuse, I can't imagine she's difficult to manipulate. Well, especially for Aes Sedai.
I always get that confused, because Galena is black, but head of the red Ajah.
Oh, okay.
So she's not head of the Black Ajah.
Just looking through here to see if there's anything I want to talk about before she walks into the drawing room.
I think just the way she treats the staff, the way she, they're clearly cowed and abused, and, the one who has been tortured to the point where, like, he can't even get up and function anymore.
Yeah. And a lot of this is for, like, looking at her wrong, which is really weird.
Right.
It makes me wonder about her. Like, is this just some, like, she is just a hateful person and she's directing it at men, or did, like, something awful happen to her, or is she just crazed? These lines, like, she walks into the house and, like, the lady of the house is walking with, is Yvonne, I think, the cook? Like,
Yep.
Or chef, maybe I should say, like, guy that runs the kitchen. Fat Yvonne saw her first and gulped, his piggy eyes darting away immediately. She did not like men looking at her, and she had spoken sharply to him on her first day here about the way his gaze sometimes lingered. He had tried to deny it, but she knew men's vile habits. Without waiting to be dismissed by his mistress, Yvonne all but ran back the way he had come. It's just dripping with venom
and disgust for men's evil habits.
All
and it's
of
like,
them,
which you mean all of them? It's very...
Wow, okay. I mean, we probably deserve it, but, there's a couple decent ones out there, I think.
And this is where I really want to... I feel like Jordan's making a point about the balance between men and women, that, like, it really is something that you can achieve, and when men and women work together, things go well. And this person who's just evil and crazy, is judging this cook based on perceived behavior that probably didn't even happen, and she's just, like, making up a punishment for him.
And she has this preconceived notion that all men are like this, so she can easily dismiss and despise them for looking, for noticing that she walked by,
And that's sort of what leads to the Sean Chan attitude, where, like, you don't look at anybody in power because you just don't want to be punished, because you're punished unfairly or for no reason for looking. It's a terrible, terrible way to live.
So weird.
And yeah, it's a really effective way of showing dark friends as evil.
Oh, I also kind of wanted to notice, before we get to the big scene, that in Liandrin's head, as she's thinking about the tower, she had only 12. 2 of the 12 are dead. I was talking about that before, of the members that she fled the tower with, and she knows it's the fault of Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine. And then we also see they were fools.
I'm trying to remember which 2 of the Black Ajah they managed to take down.
They captured, I believe, 2 while they were in the stone. Yeah, 2 they captured and questioned, but then when they were sent away, I think they were assassinated, not by the girls.
Right.
Isn't that right? Aradia says the 2 that Luke killed in the cells. Yeah, I think that's the conclusion that we came to, right? Because they get locked into their prison cell, and when it's opened, they're dead. So there's no way in or out. Nobody knows how they did it.
Yeah, so that was... Yep. So that's just reading the summary. In Tenchiko, they didn't kill anybody. The Black Sisters had to flee, but they did not. They all escaped alive from that city. So the only 2 that were killed so far have actually been killed by Slayer.
Bladen reminded us and nailed their tongues to the doors.
Yep. No talking.
And I wanted to, just to clarify before Radio was talking about Luke, and I repeated it, we're talking about Slayer, who is half Luke, half Issa. Just to clarify in case anyone didn't know who I was talking about. In any case, I think we can move forward as Liandrin walks in and someone lets her know, I think a servant or something, or maybe the lady of the house, I can't quite remember, but that a woman from the tower, quote unquote, has come to and is sitting with all of her colleagues. And Liandrin's like,
I'm Moghedien.
I guess maybe they sent us another black member. What's this all about? Of course, Liandrin walks in and sees the woman who had acted as their servant in Tanchico, who is Moghedien.
And if you go back and remember, we pointed her out way back then as Moghedien.
Yes.
And I think that was actually something you discovered for the first time during this podcast. I think I did as well. I think we both were like, oh, we never realized that was actually Moghedien.
Yeah, because she's just there. She doesn't do anything, and we don't get anything from her perspective, I don't think. Otherwise, we'd have figured it out.
Yeah, Gyldin. Right. She's just sort of there. You only learn here because she has her own face on. She's actually not using a mask of mirrors as Gyldin because Liandrin recognizes her immediately.
Yeah.
And I noticed that, like, as she walks up, Liandrin's like, well, she's not Aes Sedai because she doesn't have the ageless face. And that's, again, just clue after clue gets dropped that the ageless face and channeling aren't the same thing. And it's amazing how long it takes the Aes Sedai to put together that, like, it's the oath rod that causes the ageless face, not channeling long term.
It took me forever to put it together.
Yeah. No, it's I try not to think too much about how long it took me to figure some of this stuff out, because now reading back, some of it's so obvious.
I kind of liked in this scene initially, Liandrin, like, starts yelling at Moghedien. She's like, Gyldin, what are you playing at? Like, get off of that chair. And Moghedien reveals herself. Liandrin apologizes because she realizes she treated Moghedien like crap, like sent her to the cook to get beaten and stuff. And
right, and she's like, that didn't actually happen.
Yeah. And Moghedien's like, he was actually really nice and gave me a bunch of the sweets that he was making for you. And she was like, and she says, it would not displease me if he still lives, which means she's, like, nicer than Liandrin. Moghedien. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Like, more human somehow, even than Liandrin is, which is really impressive.
And in a way, it makes her more evil. Because you can be a little empathetic with her, whereas Liandrin, you just want to, like, fucking...
She's just awful.
Throw off the cliff.
She's
just awful, yeah. I feel like Moghedien is almost a little bit of a pathetic figure, and as is a sympathetic figure in a lot of the series, as she's, taken prisoner and terrified, and, like, when she tries to go up against the channeling that's cleansing the source, she's just like, nope, that's dangerous. I'm gonna chill out here and not do anything.
Yeah, she nopes out of that, but her style isn't, because at the cleansing, that's like a pitched battle. That is not Moghedien's style.
No, not in the slightest. Yeah, you really sort of emphasize with her, like, in a good chunk of this stuff, and you can just feel her anxiety, and, like, man, she is so caught up in something that she really just doesn't want to be.
Right. This is also, you mentioned this a bit earlier, but Moghedien kind of lets slip when she says, like, I'm taking charge of this group now, this, that, and the other thing. She says, with my hand on the dog whip, perhaps you will hunt more successfully.
Because they failed in Tanchico, they've failed in the Stone of Tyr, and they're quickly going to fail again.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she basically, she says she recruits Liandrin and the other Black Sisters to go after Nynaeve here.
This is where Moghedien kind of lets slip that she says, you serve whichever of the chosen chooses to snap you up. Whoever sends you orders from the White Tower, she takes her own from one of us now, and very likely grovels on her belly when she does. You will serve me, Liandrin. Be sure of it. And Liandrin immediately notices that means Moghedien doesn't know the plans of the other Forsaken, that they're not working together.
She doesn't even know who heads the Black Ajah.
Moghedien is ignorant she doesn't know everything. So it shows Liandrin that she's at least a human. Which
leads to Liandrin trying her little trick against her, which is not a great idea.
More or less. I didn't highlight any of this scene to read, but essentially what happens is Moghedien says, well, at some point she says, do you think that you're my equal little sister? I thought the little sister thing was something we had talked about a few episodes back when Rand calls Moraine little sister.
I missed that, yeah.
It's a thing from the Age of Legends. I assume that when you rise high enough in the Aes Sedai ranks, then you become big sister rather than just sister. You know?
Right. Or sister rather than little sister.
And Moghedien...
Or brother, rather.
Yeah.
Rather than little brother, yeah.
And Moghedien essentially challenges her, or says, like, do you think that you can beat me? Like, why don't you just try right now? And Liandrin's like, no, I'm not going to try that. And Moghedien more or less makes her.
She's like, yeah, you will. Do it now.
Yeah.
Which I feel like in a lot of ways that is Moghedien, like, she's calling her out when she's prepared for it. And that helps Moghedien sort of create this mystique and be like, don't try and challenge me because I'm always ready for it. Even though in a lot of ways... You know, I'm sure one of the reasons why she makes her do it now is because she is ready. And it does make her look more powerful. And it does make her look more on top of the punishment. If she can just beat her best efforts.
Right. It made me speculate, like, does Moghedien have, like, these trap weaves already set up? And she's, like, is she even channeling? Does she just appear to embrace Saidar? You know, it's made me question, like, how did she act so quickly? But, of course, we'll never know.
My assumption is she's just like you said, you're not quick enough, you're not strong enough, and you do not know enough. That really is just it. Like, Moghedien is just faster and stronger with the one power. Now, if these 13 women linked up and went up against her, they'd kick her ass. Of course they would.
Right.
But I don't think Moghedien's doing anything other than just being faster and stronger than the rest of these Aes Sedai.
Yeah, I was speculated in my head, and like I said, I have no way to prove this in any way, that she might have some inverted weaves hanging in the air, and so all she has to do is uninvert, and so it looks like she's doing something, that quicker.
Yeah. The only thing is, it does look like, she lights up when she embraces the source. Like, she doesn't seem to have that weave, unless she's already, like, embracing the source and just has the weave inverted so it's covered up, and then she drops it before she does anything. That seems a little elaborate, but possible.
Yeah, I don't know. But Liandrin kind of plays the game, and she's like, no, of course not. I wouldn't dream of challenging you, this, that, and the other thing. And like, as she's in the middle of her little bootlicking monologue, she tries to strike at Moghedien's mind.
Yeah, she waits for Moghedien to, like, look away, look down at her glass for a second, and then just, like, try and use that moment of distraction and strike.
Right. And, of course, Moghedien hits her with some kind of pain weave. So she's lying on the ground, sobbing and trying to scream, but she can't for a while. That's like a page of this chapter.
Right.
It's brutal.
Because we do see, it's pretty bad. But we see that as an effective way to keep people from channeling repeatedly, is if you rack them with enough pain, they'll lose the true source and be unable to you can't remain really
focused.
Hold on to, basically you have to be in a somewhat meditative state to channel, right? That's the whole point of the flower practice, the flame in the void. Like, you have to be in a specific state of mind to be channeling, and it seems pretty incompatible with massive amounts of pain. With a few exceptions, I think, like, we do see people being wounded and holding on to the source, but other times they're wounded and they lose it,
Sure.
So the meditative state is super important.
Right. And then, of course, Moghedien recognizes that Liandrin's trick, as Liandrin thinks of it, is light. It's compulsion light. We've talked about this, I guess, in the deep past. Liandrin tries her compulsion light, and Moghedien says, "Oh, do you want to see how that really works? Would you like to see what it is really like?" She channels. Liandrin gazed up at her adoringly, crawling across the floor. She pushed words through the sobs she still could not stop, and continues groveling.
It's kind of like, the neighborhood ping pong champion going to, like, the world championships and being like, Yeah, well, I can spin the ball. and the opponent being like, oh, yeah, you want to see how you can really handle a ball with the ping pong, and just like fucking slamming it on them and like backwards spinning and like just doing all sorts of crazy shit and just being like, oh, you know nothing.
I fell down a YouTube hole a couple of weeks ago of these two Northern European kids. I can't remember exactly where they're from, but they're like ping pong national champions, and they just have a YouTube channel where they just like do tricks and funny things with ping pong. They can do some awesome stuff, like serve and the ball bounces to the left or to the right or like back toward you and stuff.
It's like the Globetrotters of ping pong.
Yeah, people just swinging and missing. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, no, that's totally. It's kind of like watch Moghedien going up against any of these Aes Sedai is kind of like watching the Globetrotters go up against a normal basketball team. They just know so much more about handling the basketball and have so much more practice. But of course, Moghedien looks at her and goes, "I think you're going to need a second lesson," and she's right. Liandrin's going to try again, not in this chapter, but she will try again.
Of course she will, because she's a power-hungry monster. And this has pretty much led me right up to the readout, which is kind of long. But I just wanted to do the final scene where Moghedien instructs each of the women and sends them on their way.
So I didn't spend a lot of time going into each of those women's behaviors and what the instructions say.
Yeah, we can put a lot of it together.
That's what I was wondering. If is it worth trying to put together what these instructions are to each of these dark friends, or is that just more of like, we'll probably never know because we just don't have enough POV information from these people?
We can sit here and try to put it together. What do you think?
Just starting with Marilyn Gamalfa. Just looking at the wiki, the secret mission appears to involve travel to Camelin. Who knows? But
some of them are unknown. I'm looking at
Rihanna,
and all I see is she accepts her instructions stolidly with just a touch of relief in her eyes, but her mission is never known. Rihanna is eventually captured and held in a steading for the rest of her life, presumably. It's probably like the nicest prison ever. Bunch of kindly Ogier offering you tea.
Right, and it's like Jian, we never really hear from her again until she dies in the last battle, right? So we have no idea if she fulfilled the task or not. Yeah, it's pretty unknown whether or not they did some of this, what this stuff is. We just don't get enough.
I'm still stuck on this, but like sipping wine, smoking pipes, and gardening with the Ogier for the rest of your life sounds pretty sweet, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Like, I would retire in a steading. It sounds awesome.
Right,
to me,
except
anyway.
That, like, yeah.
And I'm a non-channeler.
You know the Dark One's coming after you?
In case you didn't know.
That's the issue. Oh, for example, like, Briella just disappears. Like, she's just never talked about again. Couple of loose ends there, Jordan.
Yeah, I've heard people complain about that in the past, that like there's a lot of plot lines that don't get and I'm not saying that you are right now, but I've heard people complain about the Wheel of Time that there's a bunch of plot lines that don't get wrapped up, and I always think, do you really want all the plot lines to be wrapped up? Take like so many more books. There's thousands of characters where you just get a little glimpse and that's it,
Do you really need to know how all those Black Ajah sisters ended up dying during the last battle, or were captured, or fled? I don't know. I think you definitely, yeah. RJ specifically left some plot lines open, as Sakan is saying, which I totally believe. Yeah, it gives you a chance to keep living in the world long after the books themselves are over, and I think it's part of what keeps this sort of speculation going as well. What happened to those Black sisters? What were the tasks that Moghedien gave them? What happened with those 12 sisters in the year or so after this that we just don't know about?
And some of them may die trying to do these tasks, and which is why we never see them again. Because you can see on the faces of the women that some of them seem okay with what they have to do, and others are terrified.
Right. And of course, Liandrin is very happy with her task, hunting down Nynaeve.
Mm-hmm. Moghedien wove the same around all of them, save Rihanna. And this is just a privacy weave that she's doing.
Plugging the ears and eyes plugging the ears so she can talk to the other ones.
Whom the Forsaken beckoned with an imperious finger to kneel before her. Then Rihanna left, and Marilyn Gamalfin was unbound and summoned. From where she stood, Liandrin could see their faces, even if their mouths moved soundlessly for her, Plainly, each woman was receiving orders the others knew nothing of. The faces told little, though. Rihanna merely listened, a touch of relief in her eyes, bowed her head in assent, and went. Marilyn looked surprised, and then eager, but she had been a Brown, and Browns could be enthusiastic over anything that allowed them a chance to unearth some moldy bit of lost knowledge. Ch18 donned a slow mask of horror, shaking her head at first, and trying to cover herself, and that disgustingly sheer gown. But Moghedien's face hardened, and Ch18 nodded hurriedly and fled, if not as eager as Marilyn, just as quickly. Jorin Arene, lean, almost to scrawniness, and as fine a manipulator and plotter as there was, and Falian Boda, long-faced and cold, despite her obvious fear, showed as little expression as Rihanna had. Ispen Shafar, like Liandrin from Tarabon, though dark-haired, actually kissed Moghedien's hem before she rose. Then, the flows were unwoven around Liandrin. She thought that it was her turn to be sent away on the shadow knew what errand, until she saw the bonds dispelled around the others remaining as well. Moghedien's finger beckoned peremptorily, and Liandrin knelt between Asne and Chesmal Emery, a tall, handsome woman, dark-haired and dark-eyed. Chesmal, once yellow, could heal or kill with equal ease, but the intensity of her gaze on Moghedien, the way her hands trembled as they clutched her skirts, said she intended only to obey. She would have to go by such signs, Liandrin realized, approaching one of the others with her belief that rewards could be had for handing Moghedien to the rest of the Forsaken might well be disastrous if the one she spoke to had decided that it was in her best interest to be Moghedien's lapdog. She almost whimpered at the thought of a second lesson. "You, I keep with me," the Forsaken said, "for the most important task. What the others do may bear sweet fruit, but to me, yours will be the most important harvest, a personal harvest. There is a woman named Nynaeve Almira." Liandrin's head came up, and Moghedien's dark eyes sharpened. "You know of her?" "I despise her," Liandrin replied truthfully. "She's a filthy wilder who ought never have to been allowed in the tower." She loathed all wilders. Dreaming of being Black Ajah, she herself had begun learning to channel a full year before going to the tower, but she was in no way a wilder.
Hypocrite.
"Very good. You 5 are going to find her for me. I want her alive. Oh yes, I do want her alive." Moghedien's smile made Liandrin shiver. Giving Nynaeve and the other 2 to her might be entirely suitable. The day before yesterday she was in a village called Sienda, perhaps 60 miles east of here, with another young woman in whom I may be interested, but they have vanished. You will... Liandrin listened eagerly. For this, she could be a faithful hound. For the other, she would wait, patiently.
The other being her desire to take down Moghedien.
Yeah, she's stoked on murdering Nynaeve or capturing and bringing her to Moghedien.
Letting Moghedien, do what she will.
But...
this is a very Dark Friend social scene,
yeah,
right?
It is.
Like, someone said that, and I was like, it reminds me of that scene with, I mean, I guess at that point it's probably Ishmael in the Dream Shard, but he basically does the same thing, where he picks them up one by one and gives them orders. Deafens all the rest.
Oh, yeah, that too. I was just thinking it's, big group of Dark Friends. Yeah, really, really similar pattern.
Yeah, Liandrin definitely was at the Dark Friend social. She talks about that. She talks about seeing, who does she see there? Bors.
Oh, yeah.
Jacob Moghedien.
She knows who he is. Or she's able to recognize him.
Yeah, she's definitely seeing the repetition of that pattern. And like I said, we never really figured out who that second Aes Sedai was, or even, but I think we thought Varen might have been that one, but that's tough to know.
Probably, almost definitely LVR and one other.
LVR may have been there as well.
Oh. Wait, was it 3 total?
Bors saw 2 for sure, but that doesn't mean there couldn't have been others.
Yeah, we don't see everyone, and so I would assume that some people would at least know to actually disguise themselves.
And why am I guessing that Varen would be better at that than any of the other? Yeah, maybe Varen was there and didn't give herself away. So the 2 you saw were Alviarin and Liandrin.
Varen is crafty.
And she would have just taken that opportunity to, spy on Dark Friends and shit.
She was in the back taking notes.
Totally. You're and that's Jake Moghedien, that's Liandrin, that's Alviarin, check. I mean, butterflies and bees. Oh god, I can just picture Varen writing in David Attenborough's voice. In this corner, we see the natural behaviors of the Dark Friend while they torture each other. In this way, they are showing dominance. And that's, again, a terrible David Attenborough voice, but we know and love David Attenborough.
Better than I can do. Adjusting my mic, sorry if this is loud. Can you guys hear any of that? Did you hear anything?
Yeah, I can hear that.
Nobody ever says anything anymore. But those old mic booms that we used to have were really loud. It's just like metal scraping on metal. Yeah.
Pinging. You get these springs that would move and ping every time you'd move them, and that vibration would go through the whole microphone.
Or if you, like, leaned on the table too hard.
No, I'm really happy with these new booms, because you can sort of move them around without really making a lot of noise. As long as you hold the boom arm. When you move them, do you touch the mic? Or you
kind of have to hold the joint and, like, the elbow and the wrist of it to adjust it. Mm-hmm. If you will.
I see.
Because I have it on... like a pretty high tension, so it doesn't move around.
These mics are actually kind of light for this boom arm. These boom arms are definitely designed for like super heavy mics and having a bunch of shit piled on the end of them. So almost have to over tighten them, or else they like tend to drift upwards.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is weird because that's like it feels like anti-gravity, but I'm like I need enough weight on this thing to hold it down, just because of the way the tension is.
I have this yoga app that like whatever. Keep the long story short. Gives you all these settings, and you can like pick if you want it to be like a man or a woman speaking in like which language, and they have like all different English accents and stuff. And I found the one I liked the best was the New Zealander accent. It's so cute, and as opposed to, or from what I hear, as opposed to dropping R's like in a lot of English accent, it almost seems like they add them. It's weird, like with the long A, the A sound. There's almost like an R in there. This is a silly tangent. I don't know why I'm going down this. I'm not even going to try to mimic it and offend all the New Zealanders that listen to the show. I'm really bad at doing accents. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just part of me feels like I'm just too old. I've just been speaking in standard Midwest accent American for so long. I don't know how to do anything else anymore. I can't even mimic other things. All right, long tangent. I don't know why I brought us down that road.
I always kind of wonder if I have a little bit of Southern accent in my speech, just because I was in the South for such a long time.
I haven't noticed if you do.
Occasionally, I'll slip out with the y'all or something like that. I think it's more in the words I use, less so much the
Sometimes accent. If I'm very drunk, the New Jersey comes out a little bit, but not usually.
Oh, yeah. If you're very drunk and angry, it's definitely all Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of why I've started to use y'all, is it's better than guys in terms of being like a gender neutral.
Totally. For
hello to people. And folks just feels a little too, I don't know, even that feels just old time. Yeah. Folks is okay though.
I used to say that I can't do the y'all thing, like it just doesn't fit me, but I've totally caught myself doing it a bunch of times now because it's one of the few things that works. It depends on who I'm playing to. Like, I will walk up to a table and call everyone dudes sometimes. Or just like, hey, dudes. But that means that they're, like, maybe my peers, and I feel like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If they're, like, elderly, middle-class folks, I would not walk up to that table and be like, what's up, dudes? You know? It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I can just, I'm imagining the middle-aged guy and be like, fine, dude, I guess.
Cringing.
Yeah. You know, I don't often get to see just the awful customers because I'm usually back in the kitchen, but I was sitting at the bar and this old lady came up and just like Man, how are they just unhappy with everything? They're not happy with what's on the menu. They're not happy with what's off the menu. They're not happy with the options. They're not happy with how the temperature it comes out. I was just like, how are you just upset at absolutely everything? It's like it's your job. And it's always this passive aggressive, well, I guess that's okay. Anyway. Don't be that customer, guys.
Yeah, I feel you. I never really know what to say about that.
Yeah, no, I don't understand why people are willing to treat other people like that.
The old manager at Grain and Gristle, John, he would talk so much shit about people like that. Be like, it's okay if you don't like it. And he would say this to me, not to customers, obviously, but like, just say that. Like, don't make me figure it out, Say that. I'll fix it. Like, don't be like, is this how it's supposed to be? I don't know. Okay, come on.
Oh, what was they ordered ginger beer, and after a long discussion, they came up and said, is your gun broken? No. Oh, okay. What do you mean? Oh, well, the ginger beer here tastes kind of watery. We thought maybe, it needed, and he poured himself a cup and was like, no, this is totally fine. It's like, oh, it must have been the ice. Yeah, that's what happens when you put a drink.
It's plausible.
In ice.
Plausible.
It's plausible that the ice might melt and make it a little watery when you don't touch it for 15 minutes and complain about the food.
Your gun broken. That does happen when you run out of syrup.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but
it's not
he hadn't run out of syrup. No.
Oh, well.
So, customers. What can you do? You can't run a business without them. You can't kill them legally.
There's a lot of stuff I like about G&G, but two of them are that we don't have TVs and we don't have a gun.
Is the gun a pain for the bartenders?
I feel like generally it can kind of bring quality of things down, or like it encourages you to use cheap syrupy shit, as opposed to making something a bit nicer. But also it's just like satisfying when someone's like, I got a Diet Sprite. I'm like, we don't have Diet Sprite, dude. You want a mineral water? Some lemon and lime juice in it?
We don't carry that shit. Because people are there for the mixed drinks. Because we are. Because you're not a hard alcohol bar, are you?
There's liquor.
There's liquor. Okay, yeah, that's right. But it's not. I always forget. It's mostly a beer bar, though, right?
Yeah, mostly beer. But recently they've expanded more out into wine, and I would say that we now have a complete bar. Not that it's like full, but full enough that I can make, most cocktails people could name. Oh, and I was going to say, John told me that the real reason they don't have a gun is because there isn't room for the equipment. It's just too small of a place.
Right. Yeah, I guess it is kind of small back there behind the bar, which is funny because you've got a pretty big kitchen relative to the pub. Yeah. But a pretty small bar, whereas we have like a pretty freaking large bar. Like there's a lot of space back there, and it's long.
And a really big restaurant in general.
Yeah. But the kitchen is like a little hole-in-the-wall thing there.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?